Welcome to Victorian England, where cocaine was not a scandal. It was essentially a food group. It resided in your tea, your toothpaste, your parenting techniques, and your paws. Physicians dispensed it as if mints, and everyone's left eyebrow would twitch in concurrence. This is how an entire nation became totally blitzed on cocaine while standing perfectly upright and judging one another's curtains. If you like dozing off to bed with stories of history's most refined vices, press that like button and subscribe for more snuggly mayhem. This episode belongs to our Victorian series, a delightful series of bedtime stories delving into the weirdest and loveliest aspects of 19th century life. Let us know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is, because there's something strangely reassuring about understanding that we're all drifting off into tales of powdered medicines and mannerly delusion. Now turn down the lights, get comfortable, and let yourself drift off as we enter a realm wherein to be calm, cheerful, and cocaine-fueled was just good manners. You simply wanted to unwind. That was all. You worked all day. You endured a very tough piano lesson. The neighbor's horse sneezed onto your crinoline, and your husband coughed dramatically in the afternoon by the window, wishing you would inquire about his nerves. So it was quite reasonable when the chemist extended to you a new temperance tonic, a cold glass of something named Coca-Cola. You deserved it. He assured it was non-alcoholic, refreshing, calming, great for the digestion, and blessed by the Pope, Thomas Edison, and somebody's aunt who hasn't slept since April. The first taste is beautiful, sweet, syrupy, a touch of citrus, a touch of spice. The second taste is different. By the third taste, your whole skeleton is humming, your jaw is grinding like a coffee grinder, and you've taken an intense interest in both the Crimean conflict and brass door handles. Your shoulders are off doing their own thing. You get the sudden, unaccountable impulse to alphabetize the carpet. You've never been more alive or more distrustful of wallpaper. You glower at the chemist. What's in that? He chuckles. Oh, it's perfectly safe. Just cocoa leaves and cola nut. You blink. Cocoa as in cocaine. Trace amounts. He assures you, practically none at all. Enough to get the blood boiling, clear the sinuses, energize the organs, wake up the spiritual body and cause you to forget your own name at dinner. You nod slowly. You're 3 sips beyond the recommended dosage, and 2 minutes from establishing a new religion. Coca-Cola, as happens, was created by an injured Confederate soldier with a morphine addiction. Of course it was. Dr. John Pemberton, pharmacist and sword winner, had what nice Victorians would describe as a chemical nuisance. So it made sense that he sought a solution by substituting his morphine addiction with a cocaine-fueled fizzy drink. His first invention, Pemberton's French wine coca, was an imitation of the wildly fashionable French beverage vin mariani, a potent combination of red wine and Peruvian cocoa leaves. It was enjoyed by everyone from Jules Verne to Pope Leo XIII, who liked it so much he awarded it a gold medal and seemed to keep a hip flask on hand for emergencies. Emergencies in this instance being boredom, prayer fatigue, or Tuesday. But in 1886, Atlanta enacted temperance laws prohibiting alcohol, so Pemberton, the born entrepreneur, took out the wine, put in sugar syrup, carbonated it all, and invented a temperance beverage that still had cocaine in it. This was akin to taking the gunpowder out of the cannon and putting fireworks in. You still got a bang, but now it was bubbly and accompanied by a head rush. Pemberton christened it Coca-Cola and promoted it as a priceless brain tonic and nerve restorative. In accordance with its early advertisements, it healed weariness, headaches, bad temper, indigestion, bashfulness, perhaps ghosts. Its slogan could just as well have been, "Why feel your feelings when you can drink them into euphoric submission?" It was dispensed at pharmacies and soda fountains all over the nation. Customers would enter tired and exit equipped to pump new paint onto their roofs, translate the Iliad, and at last face down their nasty cousin, Bernard. Thomas Edison consumed it. Sherlock Holmes likely consumed it. Individuals in corsets consumed it, and promptly regretted the amount of lung space they had for all this adrenaline. Each serving had a modest but significant amount of cocaine. It wasn't until 1903 that the cocaine was removed from the public face, although it didn't get eliminated entirely until 1929 from behind the scenes. To date, Coca-Cola continues to use cocoa leaves, simply decocainized ones, in a DEA-approved plant in New Jersey, which is completely the least surprising sentence you've ever heard regarding New Jersey. But none of that at the moment. You're 3 glasses into it, leading an imaginary orchestra in the parlor, and designing blueprints for a steam-powered sewing machine with built-in poetry criticism. You've inadvertently cured your own sciatica by running in a circle and yelling, "I'm invincible," into the gaslights, and just as you're going to be able to settle down, the chemist comes back with something else. A red wine bottle with a golden label, and a blessing from the Pope himself. You grin. What's the worst that could happen with wine and cocaine? It's just wine, that's what you think as the chemist carefully opens the bottle and pours you a full Victorian glass, that being about the size of a contemporary cereal bowl. The bottle says Vin Mariani, and the gold foil assures you that it is blessed by the Pope, the President of France, and one or more renowned magicians. You sip. It is smooth and warm and strangely spicy, as if you were drinking a Bordeaux aged in a monastery, passed through drive. After the second sip, you have no recollection of ever having had problems or blood pressure. By the third, you've recited Shakespeare in reverse, reorganized the shelves at the chemist shop by emotional significance, and accepted the town vicar's push-up challenge. You now think you're great. You think you can fly or at least hover slightly when focusing close to wallpaper. You voice aloud, "I feel wonderful." The chemist nods gravely. "Yes," he says, "that's the cocaine." Vin Mariani was the Red Bull of the Victorian era. If Red Bull came with a rosary and a doctor's note, developed in 1863 by Parisian chemist Angelo Mariani, who glanced at wine and said to himself, "This could be a lot more volatile." The beverage mixed high-quality red Bordeaux with Peruvian cocoa leaves, the natural source of cocaine. The wine pulled the alkaloid directly out of the leaves with ethanol, and the result was a mixture that provided the elegance of a dinner party coupled with the emotional arc of a rocket explosion. A glass held approximately 21 milligrams of cocaine. The advised use was 3 glasses daily, or as doctors would say it today, absolutely not. This was no secret underground potion. This was the beverage. Vin Mariani was used by Jules Verne, Thomas Edison, Queen Victoria's physicians, Pope Leo XIII, who was so keen that he carried it in a hip flask and presented Mariani with a Vatican gold medal, which coincidentally is still more formal than most contemporary energy drink sponsorships. Ad campaigns labeled it as a mind and body tonic, a wine for the fatigued, a soul-uplifting wine for the overworked soul, and quite evidently an illegal but legally acceptable way to behave like a Victorian god. Even U.S. Presidents Grant and McKinley used to indulge in it. Politicians adored it. Artists used it as a guarantee. Surgeons prescribed it. Everyone else just drank until the clock went silent. One 1880s newspaper ad stated, "A glass before breakfast gives cheer. A glass at lunch stimulates the brain. A glass before retiring calms the soul, and now and then smooths the floor with your body." Side effects were glee, industriousness, slight delusions of grandeur, spurts of unsought fluency in Latin, and the absolute conviction that your liver had become a better organ. It was also sold for the fragile constitutions of women, tired children, and anyone that felt what doctors termed exhaustion of the moral faculties, Victorian speak for weary of other people's nonsense. In the back of the chemist shop, you're filling your second glass of Vin Mariani when the candlelight starts to dance, or perhaps the walls are clapping. You're not quite certain. Your hat is inspiring. You've begun humming hymns to a spider in the corner. You're bombarded by ideas, ones mostly unrealistic, but grand, and before you can even draw a hot air balloon in the shape of Queen Victoria's profile, the chemist raps on the counter. "I have something new," he says. You spin around, eyes open wide. More wine. He edges closer. "Better. It's in tablet." You inhale sharply, and he nods gravely. "Utilized by adventurers, Arctic ones." You clearly consume the whole bottle. You're not going on an expedition. Let's make that abundantly clear. You're off to the market. You require a cucumber, shoe polish, and perhaps revenge. But your chemist, your reliable twitchy chemist, says you'll require something special for the journey. "Take these," he says, putting a glass bottle down on the counter. In a number of chalky white capsules with an embossed lightning bolt and the caption "Forced March." "For stamina," he whispers, "extremely good with the Arctic crowd." You don't ask this. You swallow one tablet. Nothing happens. You swallow another. Instantly, you're not any more tired. Victorian with cabbage breath. You're the very essence of velocity. You're a snow creature, a creature of victory. You've never ascended anything, but now you're positive you could climb a cathedral and maybe christen the skies. You dash out of the shop without paying, A decade later, you've arrived at the market, restocked the fruit stand by continent, and tried to recruit a team of strangers to accompany you on your trek to the South Pole. You don't need cucumbers any longer. You need crampons and glory. In reality, you weren't alone overconfidently strutting around in woolen trousers. Cocaine pills, commonly referred to as forced march pills, were actually employed by Victorian explorers Ernest Shackleton, Captain Scott, and Dr. Frederick Cook, who vouched for them during polar excursions. Because nothing describes sound logistics like walking across Antarctica with a nose full of drugs and blind hope. These tablets were sold as stimulants of heroic energy, supports of long marches, marvelous fatigue and exposure to wind, extremely suggested for soldiers, cyclists, and highly determined lunatics. The concept was straightforward. If you needed to march 40 miles in a blizzard, and your alternative was freezing to death in a cold tent next to a fella named Nigel, then cocaine was a fair middle ground. They were sold at drugstores, packaged in military rucksacks, and extolled in adventure memoirs. One described them as spreading warmth, clarity, and onward movement, which is romanticized given that they were merely pressed cocaine and optimism. The forced march label, specifically, guaranteed no crash, no lethargy, no pangs, which sounds like a lie said during a minor heart flutter. Some of the adventurers attributed these pills for keeping them alive. Others didn't come back and were discovered smiling bare-chested and halfway to creating the metric system in the snow. Victorian newspapers did not have many complaints about these tablets, largely due to the individuals taking them having enough energy to construct a snow fort before the ink was even dry. Back in the marketplace, you've climbed atop a stall of turnips and proclaimed yourself governor of the fruit and vegetables. You're dripping with sweat. The cucumbers are meaningless. You've drawn an improvised flag on some celery and a meat bill, and just as you're about to strut home in victory, you recall, ah yes, you did not brush your teeth this morning. Fortunately, your chemist said something to you previously, something to do with cocoa leaves, morning routine, and tongue hair. You take one more tablet. You have to get your hygiene in order. You come to lying on the floor. This is normal. You have a feeling you arrived by zealous means. Your boots are on the bookshelf. Your hair has a celery smell. There is a general recollection of yelling South Pole or bust at the vicar's cat. You slowly sit up, your pulse is continuing its drum solo in your ears, and your mouth has the taste of having been licking the interior of a coal cellar. Your tongue is parched, fuzzy, and under close examination in a tarnished mirror, perhaps gaining its own thoughts. This will not do. You require something purifying, something herbal, something Victorian and faintly French. Fortunately, the chemist has left you with a tiny glass vial filled with morning reviver for furred tongue, flatulence, and indecision. Just right. You drizzle it onto your toothbrush, swish it around your teeth, your gums, your very soul. The effect is instantaneous. You are able to taste color. Your tongue tastes as if reborn, as a somewhat irate lizard. You scream, not because you hurt, but because the clock ticked and frightened you. You jump out of the basin, slap against a towel rack, and announce the bathroom safe. You're ready to take on the day and maybe duel it. Let's discuss the cocaine-fueled Victorian morning routine. Because yes, there was one. During the 1870s to 1890s, a number of European doctors, such as the Italian anthropologist and sometimes lunatic doctor, Paolo Mantegazza, started selling coca leaf products as the definitive remedy against morning gloom. In his writings, Mantegazza asserted that cocoa could treat furred tongue, which is a dehydration or nightmare result, relieve flatulence, bleach the teeth, sweeten one's overall temperament, especially when dealing with irritating individuals. He suggested washing the mouth with cocoa infusions each morning, which became popular in hygiene-minded Victorian families, particularly among individuals who did not wonder why their toothpaste made them desire to reorganize the wallpaper. Medical publications applauded the astringent and stimulating action of cocaine upon mucous membranes. Dentists started marketing cocaine pastes, powders, and even chewing gum like lozenges as mouth fresheners and happy nerve stimulants, and the public responded with the same vigor one might give to an after-dinner seance. A single ad in an 1889 dental catalog guaranteed, "Cocaine mouthwash gives vitality to the teeth, cleanses the tongue, stimulates sociability, and readies the ladylike person for meaningful conversation." What it actually did was turn your tongue into a slab of euphoric rubber and make you abnormally excited about utensils. It was applied to start the day by housewives. It was applied before meetings by gentlemen. Teenagers likely consumed it beforehand before questioning the butler about the nature of bread, and since the effects were both purging and stimulating, soon enough people made other connections. If cocaine was good for the tongue, why not the eyes? Why not the eyelids? Why not the eyelash? Back in the bathroom, you've managed to shine your teeth, soothed the towel rack and tried to persuade your own face. You're brilliant, enlightened. Your tongue is smooth as marble, but something remains amiss. You look more closely in the mirror. Your eyelashes, too short, too humble, too unworthy of your cocaine-kissed beauty. You click your fingers. You require a needle and additional cocaine. You're going to enhance your face. You are beautiful. Your teeth shine with the luster of factory polish. Your tongue is a smooth, wet muscle of speech. You've glared at your reflection, the towel rack, and a passing dust speck, and you've emerged victorious. But something's amiss. You move closer to the mirror. Your eyes shine. Your skin is throbbing with unmerited self-assurance. But your lashes, lame, short, wholesome, the lashes of librarians and individuals with good eating habits. You're looking for something fierce. You're looking for lashes that play, that slap, that create small breezes as you blink. You recall what the chemist mentioned in that flippant style of his, as if he weren't quite certain whether he was kidding or in breach of the law. Numb eyelids with cocaine tincture, and so in new eyelashes. Extremely fashionable, extremely French, extremely stimulating. You look at the sewing kit, then the bottle of cocaine eye drops, then your own reflection. Soon your face is a war zone, your eyes numb, your hands steady. Thanks, cocaine. You've got a needle and a clump of human hair, maybe your own, maybe borrowed, and you're set. You blink, and then you go to it. Sounds like a bad plan because it is, but back in the 1890s, it was also very much a reality. Victorian beauty standards were, as the kids would say, crazy. Women habitually poisoned themselves with face powder containing lead or wafers containing arsenic for a glow in hunted waists so thin they could serve as a cheese cutter. So when someone proposed numbing the eyelid with cocaine and sewing in artificial lashes with a needle, the reaction of the public wasn't, "Oh dear God, why?" It was, "Is there a discount on both eyes?" The process was originally reported in beauty pages and salon rumors as a way of beautifying female allure without paint or powder, or rather, home surgery on your eyelids while giddily hallucinating. The process entailed putting a topical cocaine solution on the top eyelid to anesthetize it, a needle threaded with horsehair or long human hairs for the daring, stitching the lashes right onto the rim of the eyelid, staying perfectly still while your eyeball politely pleaded for mercy. It was not something that happened in medical clinics. It was performed in salons by women named Madame Claudine or Miss Evangeline, whose qualifications consisted of being able to have an opinion on hats. No data exist on the number of individuals who blinked midway through and lost depth perception, but given all else Victorians indulged in the name of beauty, the figure is likely too high. Advertisements for cosmetics guaranteed a sparkling, flirtatious eye and ravishing feminine charm. They neglected to indicate the scarring, bleeding, and overall risk of having the appearance that you lost a fencing match to a raccoon. But for the adventurous types who went through with it, they came out with longer lashes, glazed eyes, and that unmistakable aura of a human being who's seen the universe from the inside of a syringe. You look back in the mirror. You admire your handiwork. Your eyelids are sore. Your lashes are there. One points east, the other bows to the queen. But you did it. You stitched hair onto your own face with drugs and resolve. You are a contemporary masterpiece. You're also running late for tea. You pick up your parasol, your powdered gloves, and a final splash of nose refresher from a small red tin marked sniff tonic for hay fever and moral weakness. You sniff it. The world lurches slightly to the left. Your sinuses clear. Your confidence returns. Your pulse quickens. You're certainly prepared for a garden party now. You are attempting to be on good behavior. The sun is shining on a fine afternoon. The azaleas are in flower. The string quartet plays something respectable and forgettable. Your corset is cinched tight enough to redefine worlds, and Lady Mudgeworth is steaming into you by the lemonade table to expound in detail upon her newly diagnosed hysteria and the reasons why she thinks her sofa is haunted. You smile. You nod. You suffocate indoors. You require something. A gasp. A revival, a complete chemical cleansing, So you make a hasty departure, feign a cough for melodrama, and move behind a topiary in the shape of a quivering goose. From your purse, you extract your salvation. A cigarette of cocaine sold for hay fever, exhaustion, asthma, and existential terror. The package guarantees instant relief and spiritual rejuvenation. You have no conception of that whatsoever. You light a match anyway. You smoke one hit. Your sinuses fling open like French doors. Your lungs prickle. Your soul leaves the body, does a flip, and returns with a new pair of gloves and a good attitude. By the second puff, you've forgiven your mom, solved the wallpaper bubble in your lounge, and written a short opera called The Duchess and the Fern. Puff 3, you're new. Victorians adored their cocaine cigarettes, and really, who wouldn't? They were refined, legal, and utterly deranged. Pharmacists retailed them in tins, as cocaine lozenges for the nose, catarrh-cleansing cigarettes, mentholated moral clarity sticks. Presumably brands such as Allen and Hans guaranteed treatment for hay fever, headaches, shyness, the dreadful shock that your fiancé is a beetle collector. They were sanctioned by physicians, crooners, and that one aunt, who was always in gloves when she stayed indoors. It was de rigueur to be standing in your parlor, sucking down pharmaceutical-grade self-assurance with a cup of tea and a chaser of slight psychosis. And they weren't some subculture toy. No. These were available at every reputable chemist on the shelf between the licorice root and the pills that made you temporarily French. Victorian newspapers waxed indignant about medical adverts, calmed my nerves, cleared my throat, and reminded me why I had a Reginald, endorsed by 6 out of 5 barbers, cured my asthma and made me a believer in dreams once more. Every cigarette provided a fresh hit of pure pharmaceutical cocaine, sometimes combined with opium, menthol, or sheer Victorian bravado. No health warnings, merely elegant drawings of women smoking enlightenment, as if they were going to float blissfully out of their corsets. Meanwhile, over in the hedge hiding spot, you're now enjoying complete nasal cleansing, pleasant euphoria, an abrupt urge to resort to cutlery by emotional content. You flick your cigarette into a rose bush, blow out untainted enlightenment, and walk out onto the lawn like you just took Best in Show. Lady Mudgeworth emerges. You're prepared. You deliver a 7-minute monologue on the psychological connotations of bone-handled spoons. When you finish, 3 individuals are clapping, and 1 man has fallen to one knee. And as you bow theatrically, your chemist arrives. He has a little box. You lift the lid, a neatly polished syringe, and a label that says, "For fatigue, melancholy, and light fencing." You raise an eyebrow. He nods gravely. "Shall we?" he asks. "Oh, sweetheart, we shall." You're not one for needles, usually. You like your drugs in courteous manners, tablets, lozenges, enigmatic fizzing potions that vow to bring back your female passion. But today is not the same. Today you're drained emotionally, bodily, spiritually. You've just emerged from an intake of 5 hours, talking with your cousin Edith regarding her curtains, and you are 87% certain that you temporarily died, so that when your chemist comes into the drawing room with a velvet box and says, "Would you like a restorative injection?" you don't even want to know what's in it. You simply nod, roll up your sleeve and say, "Do make it symmetrical." He lifts the cover of the box. Inside, a shiny Victorian syringe and a vial of liquid concentrated cocaine for revival, efficiency, and heavy conversations with furniture. He pokes the syringe as if he has done this before. You ask him if he's a doctor. He blinks. "I was once mistaken for one at a train station." Close enough. He gives your arm an injection. What follows is difficult to say, but the description, angelic lightning bolt to the soul, feels spiritually correct. Your spine stiffens. Your eyes open. Your purpose comes back, puts on a top hat, and starts telling your internal filing system to shape up. You are wonderful. You are strong. You are likely vibrating. Injections of cocaine were a real and exceedingly popular aspect of late Victorian medicine. After the physicians discovered that they could dissolve the cocaine in water and poke it into people, they had absolutely no self-discipline. Suddenly, everything became an injection candidate. Fatigue, indigestion, anxiety, existential crises, particularly long train rides. Victorian physicians believed that injecting cocaine directly into the bloodstream would provide instant clarity, relieve pain, increase productivity, elevate mood, and occasionally make you levitate during prayer. They were right about most of that, except the levitating probably. In the 1880s and 1890s, you could walk into a chemist and purchase a cocaine injection kit. No script required. Just drop in, lay down a buck and leave with all you needed to be the most efficient and slightly frightening version of yourself. It was advertised for morphine addiction. Yes, they treated drug addiction with more drugs, alcohol addiction, nervous prostration, and industrious woman's melancholia. You could purchase cocaine ampules, preloaded syringes, and even a monthly home kit. A few women stored them in their dressing tables alongside eyebrow pencils and fainting salts, in case the thought to reorganize the pantry suddenly struck them. One 1892 newspaper ad stated, "For the tired gentleman, the overworked mother, or the overfried clerk, inject and continue. Physicians advise judicious use, meaning you should only shoot yourself up when you are fatigued, blue, bored, reflective, irritable, gassy, socially nervous, or a bit short of breath. At your home, you've just shot yourself up with enough drug-happy good spirits to replug a telegraph wire. You've redone your will in iambic pentameter, written a love note to Queen Victoria's ankles, and repaired 3 family feuds through rabid cross-stitch. You're on fire, aglow, maybe immortal. But then, as you pose dramatically beside the fire, you glance in the mirror and gasp, not at your eyes, which are shining bright, not at your skin, which is radiating ambition. No, it's your hair, limp, defeated, spiritually. Your curls slump, as if they've had too much to do with the horrors you've witnessed. Your part has started meandering westward in protest. Your glory craves better. You grab for your powder, but no. Powder is for beginners. You require science. You require something strong. You require... There it is on the dressing table. A cobalt bottle with Dr. Harrow's capillary tonic for weak-willed follicles and cocaine written on it. You twist off the top. Peppermint, misguided hope, and a slight chemical warning smell it. You smile. Tonight you will be reborn, but this time with amplitude. You stand in your dressing gown as a general about to go into battle. Your hair is disappointing. Not bald precisely, just emotionally removed. It hangs against your skull as if it's been weighed down with too much to know. One half has wrapped itself into the form of resignation. The other half is clearly attempting to resign. This won't do. You twist open the blue glass bottle on the vanity, Dr. Harrow's capillary tonic for weak-willed follicles with cocaine, camphor, and the power of hope. It tastes like peppermint death, and poor choices made with impeccable posture. You lean your head forward. You pour. It slams against your scalp like a recitation from a theologian by an opera singer within a copper bell. You're suddenly very much awake. Your follicles hum like an agitated beehive. Your eyebrows try to flee. Your sideburns make a formal complaint. You feel it in 30 seconds. Aggressive tingling, forceful tingling, uncontrolled by any agency tingling. You start pacing. You start strategizing. You start developing personality traits you lacked 10 minutes ago. This is not merely a haircut anymore. This is your birth. Victorian hair care was lovely, uncontrolled turbulence of falsehoods, herbs, and opiates. Cocaine ended up in all sorts of scalp tonics and hair restorers, typically sold in apothecary bottles under such labels as Professor Etheridge's Scalp Elixir, Dr. Fenwick's Invigorator of the Follicular Realms, and Miss Penelope's Vibrational Pomade for ladies and high-strung governors. All of them claim to thicken thinning hair, cure dandruff, stimulate circulation, keep your soul from escaping via your scalp. Reportedly, the active ingredients tended to include cocaine, camphor, borax, ammonia, and something under the generic label of invigoration juice. The towns boasted that within 3 applications, clients felt a heat on the head with subsequent ideas. One fashionable 1890s pamphlet said, "The gentleman's scalp must be alive, responsive, electrified, and willing to participate in society." Certain tonics instructed applying the solution to your hair hard for 5 minutes daily. Others recommended overnight treatments in which your head would buzz gently with a pleasing buzzing noise as proof of its change. Did it? Not on your life. But it would have. At least it would have seemed that way, and that was good enough. You did not become more hairy. You became brashier, fuller, and more convinced that you could out-argue a chandelier. At home, in your bedroom, your scalp is stimulated to the point of being almost vibrating in Morse code. You brush your hair and deposit sparks. Your curls are perked up on high alert, mildly militarized. You stare at the mirror and breathe softly. You are the storm to no one in particular. You fling open the window and shout to the street, "I am bulky and I shall be respected." The neighbors applaud, and as you turn to celebrate with a tiny triumph waltz, your chemist appears in the doorway carrying an envelope. For your nerves, he says nonchalantly. Within, a pink glass bottle with the words Madame Lavona's elixir for emotional delicacy with cocaine and very good intentions. You nod. Time to unwind. Time to repair your personality. You're attempting to be delicate today. That's what the etiquette book instructed. A lady must float, not tread. You try to float. You fail at once. You're treading. You tread over to the tea tray. You stamp to the parlor. You stamp through a flashback of 1867. Your nerves, to say the least, are not fragile. They're bristling, bellowing, and maybe even armed. So you do what any properly situated Victorian lady would do. You retrieve your nerve tonic. The bottle is pale pink with embossed lettering and a ribbon draped around the neck. It says, Madame Lavona's elixir for the restoration of feminine composure, with cocaine, valerian, and absolute certainty added. You sip a ladylike amount, then another because it tastes like rose petals soaked in peril, and then the lace curtain dances, and before you know it, it's too frilly, and then your gloves seem like emotional treachery, and then, in 90 seconds, you have opinions, too many opinions. Victorian nerve tonics were sold to women as delicate restorative elixirs. They weren't. They were drug company hand grenades, masquerading as sympathy. 19th century women were regularly diagnosed with conditions such as uterine melancholy, wandering womb syndrome, over-collected thoughts, and the perennial classic nerves. The remedy, bottled madness. Nerve tonics were marketed under brand names such as Dr. Stanhope's Liquid Grace, Gentlewoman's Resilience Syrup, Mrs. Flannery's Panic Preventer with coca leaf and just a pinch of something divine. The key ingredients: cocaine, booze, morphine, caffeine, and occasionally a gold leaf, because why not? These were prescribed to women who had anxiety, mood swings, loud-mouthed opinions, reading too much, refusing to get married. 1891 ad guaranteed, Madame Lavona's tonic revives the soul, cleanses the breath, and soothes the wayward femininity that breeds unauthorized book clubs. Did they work? Well, yes, but not in a soft, soothing way, but rather in the she hasn't blinked in 6 hours, but she painted the whole library and did her algebra sense. Some women only took a teaspoon and promptly decided to begin writing manifestos. Others took 2 and became emotionally wedded to their wallpaper. Side effects were seldom printed, but regularly witnessed. Back in your drawing room, your heart is whispering a monologue from Shakespeare, and your eyebrows are trying to unionize. You have fixed your posture, organized your enemies, named your elbows Gerald and Faith, and developed a completely new dialect based on sighs and meaningful glances. Your maid walks in. She asks if you're all right. You answer in German. You don't speak German. You excuse yourself politely and run headfirst into a houseplant. You require balance. You require grounding. You require a bath. And would you believe it, just delivered by the chemist is a shiny new soap. You read the wrapper, cocoa soap for skin that feels touched by angels and also mildly on fire. You take your towel. It's time to bath like a goddess with no impulse control whatsoever. You're wrapped in decisions. They stick to your skin like regret and linen. You've emotionally invested too much in 3 dinner parties, 2 hobbies, and a transient seagull who glared at you too hard. You have to scrub the day off. You fill the bathtub. You pour in floral salts. You add rose oil. You light a candle that smells like inherited trauma. And the coup de grace, you grab the latest addition to your bath kit. Professor Wigham's cocoa soap of clarity, skin radiance, and unscheduled euphoria. It appears to be a bar of soap. It smells like peppermint and foretelling. You get it sudsing, and everything becomes clear. Your pores unseal. Your scalp claps. A Victorian angel drifts by your window and gives a thumbs up. Your elbows are sentient by the time you finish the second rinse. Your knees recall a nursery rhyme from childhood. The water radiates a weak glow of ambition. You are clean. You are born anew. You are vibrating. In the late 19th century, cleanliness was next to godliness and occasionally narcotics. Victorian toiletry shelves were stocked with cocaine-infused hygiene products from scalp lotions, tooth powders, facial creams, and yes, soap. Manufacturers promoted cocoa soap as a gentle skin cleanser that also invigorated the blood, stimulated the nerves, cleansed the spirit, and made you capable of organizing a charity gala with nothing but a loofah and pure intent. An 1887 one said, "For the lady whose loveliness is exhausted, cocoa soap revives complexion and confidence to the soul." An 1892 one promised, "Its foam sweep away dead skin cells, spiritual impurities, and doubts as to your marriage chances." Some of the usual ingredients were cocaine hydrochloride, lanolin, lavender oil, and a quantity of menthol said to be bracing to faint hearts. Soap no longer just cleaned. Soap was now a tool of morality, a beauty treatment, and a means to temporary all-knowingness. Customers exhibited feelings of crystalline clarity, warmth, tingling numbness, and an overwhelming, inexplicable urge to repaper their ceiling in symbolic designs. Physicians were divided in opinion, but largely because they were otherwise occupied bathing in the stuff themselves. You're floating again, back in your bathtub. Literally, you have attained the exact balance of buoyancy and self-worth. Your cheeks glow. Your skin is like rose petals rolled in cocaine logic. You no longer need towels. You air dry through sheer force of will. You rise as you glides to the mirror, and there on the washstand sits a final gift from your chemist. Cocoa face cream of glow, wrinkle resistance, and blasphemous amounts of confidence. You smile. You've smoothed out your history. Now you get to lubricate your future. You put on the cream. You don't inquire. You don't look at the label. You just take a big hunk of chilled rosy possibility from the jar and slap it on your face like a Victorian queen getting ready for battle. It buzzes, then it tingles, then it whispers. Your skin is humming. Your forehead attains clarity. Your jawline starts delivering ultimatums to your neighbors. You're not just hydrated, you're rising. You add some. Why not? Your face is worthy of this. Your paws have endured things. They've seen corsets, public dismay, and last week's spoon-related emotional trauma at tea. As you work the cream into your cheeks, the feeling builds, cold and electric, as if you're kissing a glacier that trades on stocks. Your temples throb, your nose tickles, your eyebrows raise up and amenably declare their retirement. You look into the mirror, and you gasp, not because you appear bad, because you appear ready, ready to take on your cousin, ready to redefine etiquette, ready to be someone who never apologizes for blinking too loudly. You glower at yourself in the glass and say under your breath, "You are radiant, you are frightening, and you are absolutely going to write a strongly worded letter to Parliament regarding the emotional toll of tablecloths." Your image nods. It gets it. Victorian beauty creams were not merely about aesthetics. They were about delirious aspiration. Face creams, lotions, and night balms were frequently loaded with cocaine, mercury, lead, and a dash of colonial hubris. They claimed to erase spots, tighten the skin, stimulate the spirit, and eliminate emotions deemed aesthetic liabilities. One actual 1890s ad claimed, "Our cocoa cream, it stimulates the skin, restores youthful bloom, and quiets the hysteria of an inadequately admired woman." Another promised deliciously tingles on application, once applying, and your jawline can become ambitious. These were promoted to women with glum faces, women with wedding weariness, women who had simply spent too much time outdoors and gotten a case of sunshine. They were packaged in beautiful pots with swan-shaped covers and botanical etchings, as if the packaging would distract from the fact that you were applying pure narcotics to your head. Physicians would sometimes express worries about long-term exposure, to which most customers responded, "But have you seen my skin and ongoing glowing into the void?" Back at your makeup table, you now look like a brightfully lit menace. Your face shines with intent. Your lips have plumped themselves up out of fear naturally. You smile at yourself, and it winks back with obvious malevolence. You walk down the stairs like a woman who's going to sue a duke. Below, your pharmacist is waiting. He presents you with a tray. On it, a solitary chocolate truffle. You raise an eyebrow, he nods. "It's medicated," he mutters. "For the nerves and for the sugar deficit induced by spiritual greatness." You take a bite. "Oh no, that's not chocolate, that's chocolate." Sweetie, ecstatic, a little disquieting. You chew deliberately. You're going to be a sweets deity. You've earned your reward. You've moisturized. You've tamed your own face. You've delivered 3 telepathic threats to your enemies through your eyebrows alone. You've worked for this. So you rip the tiny pink box from your silver tray and untie the satin ribbon with the same solemnity that someone would use to defuse an emotional bomb. The sweets within are fragile, tiny domes of sugar, beauty, and likely crime. You put one in your mouth. It has the flavor of lavender, strength, and secrets nobody should possess. You chew deliberately. Your eyes widen. Your back reboots. You hear a soft but unmistakable voice. You can't be stopped. By number 3, Bon Bon, you've repositioned your furniture according to aura and composed a 5-act play on forks. At number 4, you can sniff time. You're 82% Bon Bon and 18% prophecy now. Victorian society believed in cocaine for wellness, and nowhere was this more deliciously dangerous than in their sweets. Cocaine-laced chocolates were marketed for women suffering from melancholy of spirit, students facing mental overexertion, and literally anyone with a mouth and access to disposable income. These were not specialized sweets. These were department store essentials. They were available in flavors such as rose, vanilla, mint, and boundless ambition. 1890s ad copy vowed. Stirs the mind while pleasing the palate for the working lady, the anxious poet, or the unimpressed governess. Some boxes even had dosage labels. 1 Bon Bon for cheer, 2 for energy, 3 for productivity, 4 not during legal proceedings. The manufacturers asserted the chocolates stimulated both mind and complexion, which is decadent since they basically were edible brass knuckles for your nervous system. Physicians argued over whether they were suitable for children, a tactful question of how small is too small to hallucinate a Christmas goose reciting Shakespeare. In your parlor, back home, you've completed the box. You're throwing a tea party for 12 people, even though no one was invited. You're balancing a full silver tray in one hand and reading your own horoscope in iambic pentameter aloud. Your guests, coat rack, maid, and befuddled neighbor who you roped into the garden are all listening intently. Someone applauds, you curtsy, and just as you start handing out cucumber sandwiches in the form of your own initials, your chemist ducks in through the window. He holds up a little blue bottle marked Dr. Fogsworth's anti-cramp elixir for ladies containing cocaine, camphor, and most suggestive of all claims. He raises an eyebrow. You nod once. Cramps time. The cramp strikes with treachery. Not a gentle pang, not a whisper. No, this is a whole-body announcement of war. It comes with the poise of a tipsy goose and the emotional finesse of a hurled candlestick. You lock up in mid-step, hand on stomach, fist in nearest furniture. You gasp like the person just besmirched your bonnet in public. Your uterus is flinging furniture. Your ovaries are forming unions. You can sense your corset judging you. You lurch across the floor to the vanity like a woman on a mission and small-scale internal rebellion. You swing open the drawer, spilling 3 jars of eyebrow cream and a commemorative brooch you have yet to emotionally unpack. There it is. Dr. Fogsworth's Lady Elixir for every month of inner conflict for the properly dressed woman with cocaine camper lord and willpower. You twist the cap off with trembling hands. The scent smacks you first. Eucalyptus peril and the distant recollection of some improper poem you received at boarding school. You gulp it because you have finished playing games. In seconds, your internal organs are floating. Your spine aligns. Your pupils are so hard they hear the carpet secrets. You are cramp-free. You are pain-free. You are technically unmed from linear time. You take a second gulp because no one should encounter menration, civilized society, and a disappointing tea tray without being drunk. Your uterus sends you a thank you note now. You curtsy to nobody in general. There is going to be a useful day. Victorian lady tonics were a drug genre in themselves, marketed as remedies for monthly disturbance, womb-connected disobedience, undue thinking during menses, and the ever-recurring diagnosis of being female in a complicated world. These tonics contained cocaine, camphor, alcohol, laudanum, and sometimes admonitions like do not drive machinery while climbing higher spiritually. They vowed to alleviate cramps, stabilize mood, restore composure to wayward ovaries, and reinsert the soul back into the body. Results vary. Ads in women's magazines included such testimonials as, "Within 1 spoonful I forgot I had a uterus and set up to play the pianoforte with both hands and no regrets," or "My wife used to bawl at doilies. Now she redecorates the shed in under an hour." Some tonics even included gold-trimmed measuring spoons because if you are going to hallucinate respectability, you must do so with style. At home in the parlor, you are free of cramp, and at your 4th hour of haranguing your armchair on the feminist connotations of lace trim, you have reworded your diary as a political tract, drawn a pie chart of your mood swings and their victims, and flatly determined to do away with Tuesdays. You have 3 shawls draped over you, none of them yours. Your hair is immaculate. Your shoes are psychologically bolstering. The maid reaches her peak. She holds up a fragile green tin. You scan the label. Children's calming syrup for teething, whining, and overspokenness. Cocaine boosted. Approved by governesses, wolves and God. You draw an eyebrow. She nods gravely. You incline your head. Just a sip, you breathe. For science. The baby is screaming. Not politely. Not whimsically. No sweet little sobs into a sheep-embroidered handkerchief. It's operatic fury in the key of demented barn owl. He's teething. He's flailing. He's launching scone with the accuracy of a professional artilleryman. You've done it all. Rattles. Warm milk. Bribery. Exorcism. Nothing until you recall the tin. You dig it out of the nursery drawer. It's green and gold with fine scroll work and a picture of a cherub that appears marginally sedated. On the label is printed Mrs. Flindle's soothing syrup for teething temper and tiny tempests. Contains cocaine, morphine, alcohol, and quiet. You are taking a spoonful, then changing your mind. You double it up. You scoop it softly into his screaming mouth like a ritual. He blinks. He hiccups. He sighs. And silence. He looks at you as if he has just cracked gravity and may write a thesis on it. You scoop him up. He waves once with majesty and then sleeps mid-blink. You can't tell if he's cured, dreaming, or in another dimension for a while, but you do know one thing. You have found peace. Victorian parenting was not about tranquil bedtime rituals but about chemical diplomacy. Soothing syrups, calming powders and baby pacifiers were all regularly saturated with cocaine, morphine, alcohol, chloroform, and the overall attitude of they'll be fine, most likely. These were bought over the counter. No prescription, no warning label, no suggestion that your child was going to astrally project out of the wallpaper. Some of the more popular brands were Mrs. Winslow's Soothing Syrup, Jane's Carminative Balsam, Godfrey's Cordial, Delby's Elixir Quiet Baby, now with triple morphine power. They were sold for teething, colic, fussiness, loudness of spirit, and overall baby unpleasantness. One actual ad bragged, "A quiet child is a blessing. A child who remains quiet for 12 hours is our product at work." Mothers swore by it, doctors warned against it, and babies, well, they either slept peacefully or stared into space like they'd just seen the ghost of Queen Victoria playing whiz with a walrus. By the 1900s, scandals and deaths had started to accumulate, and people were shocked except for literally any given person who was paying attention, and rules finally made it in. For decades, though, a spoonful of syrup could fix everything, including your child's wishes to see the world as it was. In the nursery, your angel sleeps peacefully, face calm, mouth slack, a soft snore that sounds vaguely like diplomacy. You sigh, and just as you sit down to rest your tired, judgment-clouded head, your chemist knocks at the door holding a brown bottle with ribbon wrapped around it. You read the label, Mr. Crumb's Medicinal Cocoa, a hot drink for the whole family infused with cocaine and the spirit of adventure. You smile because, honestly, what is a better way to unwind than with cocaine hot chocolate? The cocoa comes like God's letter bomb. A sip and your blood is in a staff meeting. Your eyelashes get straight with drive. Your heartbeat files for overtime. You feel warm, wide-eyed, and seriously overqualified to be in any conversation you've ever had. You rise up slowly, and then quickly, and then again just to remind gravity who's boss. You're no longer a human sipping on cocoa. You are the cocoa. You are the mug. You're the whole cup experience. Thoughts flow into your mind like they're in a rush to meet a deadline. You move your furniture around in your head with your aura. You get calculus. You compose a 47-page apology letter to your third-grade art teacher, and then retract it because you've just realized you were correct all along. You're incandescent. You are unbeatable. You are slightly worried about how difficult your ankles are buzzing. You glance at your watch. It reads 2:03 a.m. You do not blink. You do not inhale. You alphabet as your neighbors. You're at last relaxed. Victorian medicinal cocoa was the healthier choice over tea or coffee, which is crazy because it had cocaine, caffeine spices that once began naval wars, and just enough sugar to get your heart to file for hazard pay. Cocoa fortified was sold for nervous exhaustion, physical weariness, mental confusion, and spiritual disappointment. It was powdered or liquid, and was drinkable hot or cold according to how much you wished to hallucinate upon rising in the morning. An 1889 ad advertised for ladies who need concentration and strength, and for gentlemen of weak blood and commercial aspirations. It guaranteed restful alertness, gentle stimulation, and enhanced capacity for polite indignation. Physicians described it as a great overstimulant. Kids were administered half doses. The elders received 2. Those who complained about the contents were instructed that they were not allowing themselves to tap their inner energy. The feedback from consumers was mixed. I sorted my sewing kit by feeling. I debated with my mantle clock, and I won. I haven't blinked since Tuesday and I feel great. Back in your parlor, your cocoa cup is dry. You've repolished the silver, created a superior alphabet, and ghost-written your husband's memoirs, all while patrolling in circles and saying things like, "Justice is a saucer, and I am the tea." You glance at the clock, 2:47 a.m. You're not tired. You're genius. You're perhaps radiating. Just as you are thinking, a small package glides across the mail slot. You grab it and read the label. Paul Grimble's unbeatable hay fever snuff. Breathe easy, think hard, cough in Latin, cocaine potency enhanced. You grin. There's always room for a bit of nose powder before dawn. You're in the garden communicating with a fern. It gets you. You've just blown your nose so forcefully that time stopped for a second, said sorry, and continued on its way. The world is living. The air is charged. The leaves are talking. And actually you concur with them. You've done your hay fever medication. That is, you've snorted Victorian sensibility. Every flower is too lovely. Every gust of wind is an epiphany. Every sneeze is like a slight religious epiphany. Your eyes are streaming, but abstractedly. You're not shedding tears. You're just deeply affected by the effective richness of grass. You crouch next to a daffodil and say softly, "I know. You have no idea what you know." But the daffodil gravely inclines its head. Once, you attempt to write a letter to Queen Victoria in the ground with a stick. You don't complete it because you are thoroughly preoccupied with the scent of sunlight and the suspicious activity of a nearby goose. You are bright. You are unencumbered. You are so hyper-alert that the trees themselves recoil when you close your eyes. A distant sneeze and you spin around ready to provide medical assistance. A handkerchief and a short interpretive dance regarding nasal freedom. You're outside. You're on medication. You're hazardous. During the Victorian period, hay fever was not looked at as a seasonal affliction. It was a moral weakness of the sinuses. Victorians, instead of treating it, used cocaine-based nasal powders, sometimes marketed as snuffs, inhalation tonics, or simply for the restoration of nasal vigor. Popular brand names were Grimble's Snuff for refined individuals, Dr. Marlowe's Nasal Fortifier, Perry Davis's Nose Dust, patent pending. These items were sold as cures for hay fever, catarrh, summer nose distress, and emotional sniffing. They arrived in tins, bottles, or once-only packets, and were usually accompanied by notices such as this from the Boston Globe, 1889. One pinch relieves all stoppage of breath, clears the head, and restores courtesy to the gentleman sneezing. One actual advertisement for Dr. Gay's nasal cure stated, "Choicest by choirs, chemists, and financiers. A nasal discovery." The Cincinnati Enquirer, in a review of health tonics 1891, even joked, "If one cannot breathe freely after Dr. Thornton's cocoa snuff, then perhaps one should deem breathing optional." The side effects were hallucinations, nosebleeds, overwhelming confidence in one's thoughts on doilies. In your entryway once more, your sinuses are singing the national anthem. You've pressed 6 handkerchiefs with your gaze. You've foreseen tomorrow's rain. You've started giving nasal readings to visitors like a fortune teller for the emotionally constipated. The air is scented with lavender and dust and possibilities. You grab another sniff. Just a quick top off, you promise yourself, and then you see it on the tray. A light purple bottle, capped with silver. The label says Madame Belvoir's facial toner and complexion corrector for fatigued skin, thin confidence, and beauty beyond your station with cocaine. You slowly blink. Time to do your skin routine. With zeal and repercussions, you're already talking. You have no idea when it began. You have no idea to whom, but you are in mid-monologue, standing atop an upturned tea crate in the park, speaking to a confused group of 12 onlookers and one extremely critical pigeon. Your voice is clear. Your spine is firm. Your eyebrows are giving their own individual lecture. You are on fire. The elixir of public speaking has taken hold. Your left hand waves so strongly it can almost create a tiny whirlwind. Your right hand holds your parasol with the tenacity of a gavel. You are perfect. You are bothered about voting rights, hat sizes, and doily angles. You catch the eye of the vicar. He nods. He's making a list. You don't remember drinking the elixir. You only remember reading the label Lady Harmon's elocution enhancer for stage fright, hesitation, and the sorry tendency to listen when others talk. Contains cocaine and a pinch of consequence. You must have consumed the entire bottle. You haven't stopped talking for 38 minutes. Victorians were under massive pressure to use the correct language in public, and the answer, of course, was pharmaceutical confidence in a bottle. They were marketed under titles such as Professor at Will's Public Composure Solution, Dr. Beasley's Tincture of Eloquence, Miss Greta's Pre-Toast Courage Drops with Cocaine and Social Clearness. They were promoted to orators, debuts, actors, preachers, and anyone who had to endure shaky tone, verbal timidity, or the soul-deadening burden of eye contact. The standard recipe consisted of cocaine, brandy, peppermint oil, perhaps fireworks depending on the effect. These tonics were also taken prior to speeches, marriage proposals, dinner toast, boisterous opinions at garden parties. One actual testimonial that was published in the Cheltenham Journal 1893 read, "Having taken the elocution enhancer, I spoke to the town council, my mother-in-law and 2 swans. No one interrupted me. I was noticed." Stage actors were the notorious users. So were ministers, attorneys, and certain governesses with irresistibly convincing bedtime story reading. Total extinguishing of fear was reported by most users, an added tendency to dramatically pause for effect, and speeches beginning with good evening and ending somewhere between "Give me Scotland" or "Give me death." Back in the park, you're now citing Cicero, Shakespeare, and your Aunt Ha's pie recipe as if they are all equal parts of some sacred dogma. The people are under your spell. A kid gives you a flower, a dog bows, you've overcome fear, you're the voice of reason, you're the echo in the cathedral, you're delivering a TED speech to a duck. But then a new tonic is pressed into your hand. This one is labeled a Madame Rivington's appetite corrector for the woman who desires less bread and more control. Cocaine rich, unapologetically slim. You raise an eyebrow. You haven't eaten in 6 hours. You also haven't blinked in 6 hours. But one more bottle couldn't hurt. For confidence, for discipline, for the pursuit of tight waistlines and chaos, you are slicing a radish with resentment. Not because you hate radishes. You simply hate the whole idea of food. Now you've taken Madame Rivington's hunger corrector, and you no longer get hungry, tired, or compassionate. You've lost your appetite, but gained everything else at lightning speed, compulsively, perfectly. You've cleaned the floorboards with a toothbrush. You've buffed the door knobs until they've pleaded for mercy. You've scrawled control in all caps on your mirror in eyebrow pencil and holy indignation. You feel light. You feel clean. You feel capable of winning an arm wrestle with only spite. A maid presents you a crumpet. You glare at it as if it offended your bloodline. You breathe softly. Temptation is the enemy of excellence, and got back to alphabetizing your teacups by temperature attention. Victorian women were always under pressure to remain thin, pale, and only weak enough to be ornaments, but not unduly inconvenient. And so it was only natural that cocaine was a diet supplement marketed under brands such as Madame Rivington's Appetite Regulator, Slim Aid Elixir, Dr. Beesham's Feminine Figure Powder with Cocoa Leaf and Moral Encouragement. These tonics promise to quash cravings, cure fleshliness of the spirit, raise the will above cake. Cocaine, naturally a stimulant, did curtail appetite along with sanity, sleep, and your capacity to blink without scheming. One actual 1894 ad read, "Take 1 dose with meals, and anon you shall desire nothing whatever, not bread nor meat nor talk." These medicines were a craze among actresses, society matrons, and women who simply did not care to be accused of eating lunch. Side effects were hyperactivity, mood swings, unprecedented hat-straightening ability, the bizarre impulse to reorganize all things save your feelings. Back in your sitting room, you're fasting and furious. You've spun an entire blanket out of old dress hems. You've begun a diary for your houseplants. You've written a furious letter to the concept of gravy. Your chemist arrives. Ringing, sweaty, shaking. You open the door during mid-courts. He produces a bottle. It says, "Dr. Swan's Bedtime Elixir for the Chronically Awake," gently laced with cocaine, laudanum, and lullabies. You nod. It is time to sleep, or maybe not. You can't remember when your legs quit being legs. They may well still be there, but psychologically they've announced early retirement. Your elbows are like puddings with dreams. Your hair is hovering to and off your scalp and quietly whispering government secrets. Fine. You've consumed the elixir. The nightcap elixir. The one with the delicate flowered label and heavy legal consequences. The one that guaranteed to calm your nerves, still your mind, and settle you into sleep with strict Victorian fiat. And now you're the specter of your own bedtime ritual. You're sprawled across the bed like a Victorian fainting couch brought to life. You're stretched out across the bed in a pose that implies either deep serenity or full-out neurological collapse. You're dissolving. You blink every 7 minutes. Your mind glides along in slow motion like emotionally traumatized swans. You briefly consider whether you're dreaming or merely very horizontal. You can hear a clock ticking in the room next door and start crying because it's so courageous. You're swathed in 5 quilts, a moral crisis, and a gentle hum that could be the wallpaper singing lullabies. Your eyelids resign. Your breathing ceases. You sink into a sleep so profound that time temporarily forgets about you. This is not a nap. This is Victorian slumber, and if you are awakened early, you will sue the person in your dream lawyer. Victorian sleep tonics weren't subtle. They were pharmaceutical power naps in a bottle. These tonics weren't so much about sliding you gently off to sleep as they were about bludgeoning your nervous system into unconsciousness with a mixture of cocaine, laudanum, opium tincture, chloral hydrate, alcohol, and a hint of, please don't read the ingredient list too carefully. Sold under such romantic names as the Night Lady's Restorative, Dr. Swan's Bedtime Cordial, Madame Forsyte's Midnight Mercy with Anise, and Forgetting Powder, these were consumed to treat insomnia, hysteria, excessive ruminating, and women who read beyond sundown, and thus became wide awake in the worst possible manners. One illustrated police news article, June 1892, told of a case in which a woman, chronically troubled with wakefulness, was discovered to be sleeping most peacefully at last after taking a double dose of a sleeping draught promoted near Piccadilly as merely a cordial of peculiar smell and arresting quiet. At the same time, the British Medical Journal warned in 1889, although some tinctures produce the semblance of sleep, they will also stupefy more than nervousness and should never be confused with security. In spite of warnings, the tonics were still enormously popular, particularly among women who could afford them. Nerves, or just too many emotional obligations prior to breakfast. Side effects were deep unconsciousness, rich fantasies about complete life overwrites, and forgetting sometimes that you'd had a whole second child. And thus ends our wonderful fall into the lasso-trimmed madness of Victorian medicine, an age in which any disease could be cured by a vigorous promenade, a fashionable hat, or an unspecified amount of cocaine. They snorted it, smoked it, applied it to their gums, brushed it into their hair, gave it to their kids, massaged it into their feelings, and referred to it as well-being. If history has taught us anything, it's that no one who consumes cocaine-drugged cocoa at bedtime should ever be trusted alone with a mirror, a megaphone, or a printing press, but at least they slept like babies. Eventually, face down in a fainting chair, radiating confidence and softly humming, sleep-tight powdered pioneers, you are very, very ill, and we respect you for it. And now, with the final powder dusted from the vanity and the drawing room quieting in moonlit shadows and gently shivering curtains, I hope this bizarre stroll through Victorian cocaine remains, like the burn of tonic on the tongue, or the residue of a monologue spoken to an utterly still fern. You've battled beauty creams, bonbons, nasal snuffs, and elixirs so stimulating they made the teacups quiver. But now it's time to wind down. The bottle is finished, the eyebrows have decompressed, and for tonight the nerves remain calm. If you're still up, well done. You've made it through another night inside history's most style-overwhelmed period. Press subscribe so we can open up another odd nook of the past on tomorrow night's episode. And as you nap, the gentle hiss of the blaze will transport you further, away from powdered ethics and coffee-sparked complexion routines, and into dreams.